was so there, and the twilight's past me, with stars and bright stars through the glare of the sky. Oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streamed, and the rocket's red glare of a bursting in air came through the night, that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bill Cashman will lead us in the invocation.
Please join me in prayer. Dear Lord, we do indeed thank you for all the many blessings you've given us and how you've guided our lives, how you brought us together here in this wonderful Rotary Club where we're called to service above self. Now we ask you to please bless this food to our bodies and us to your service. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Bill. Terry Duffy, family of Rotary.
Thank you, President in waiting, Greg. Sounds royal. That's President in waiting. Anyway, enough of that. Birthdays and anniversaries. Should just say birthdays. Birthdays, Philip Gilly, February 7th. John Watson, Mr. John Watson on February the 12th. And Brandon Hurst on February the 13th. I don't know what's going on, but no anniversaries at this time of the year. I would have thought it was Valentine's, we would have been loaded. And Heather even, I think, shared with me that we didn't have any anniversaries in this club until like March. It's kind of crazy for that time of the year. Maybe back when all us old guys, we just didn't get married at Valentine's Day. We remember to take a Valentine. Anyway, y'all have a great week. Thank you.
Lawrence Johnson has our introduction guest.
Happy Monday. We are happy to welcome our guests and visiting Rotarians today. When I call your name, would you please stand and remain standing until all visitors are recognized. Laura Suki, guest of Donna Clemens. Jessica Bollinger, guest of Cameron Good. Morgan Engel, guest of Catherine Melee. Powell Grisham, guest of Adam Riverson. Nick Oliver, guest of Josh Chapman. Demetrius Bogan, guest of Bruce McNeil. And then visiting Rotarian Brandon Shute of the Tuesday Club. Did I miss anybody? Welcome.
Dennis Coe has a fantastic drawing. $2,700 points. The last three digits are 084.
Good. Good man. Good man.
A good one, King of Forest.
Next time.
Couple of announcements today. Our soup drive, last day of collection is 2 weeks from today, so we've got a couple more weeks. And then the blood drive here next February 14th. Yeah. What's that? Very good, thank you. All right. Brendan Hurst will introduce our speaker today.
It's my pleasure to introduce Brittany Sheppard. She's with the Brightkey program here with the Dothan City Schools. She hails from a tiny southwest Georgia town and has called Dothan her home for the last decade. After graduating from the University of Georgia, she spent 2 years in India working with nonprofit organizations. She was on staff previously with PR Employer and Eagle Eye Outfitters before joining Brightkey as the Brightkey Resource Coordinator for Highlands Elementary. While at Highlands, Brittany developed and implemented programs alongside stakeholders and their families while connecting the community to the school. After 7 years as the resource coordinator, she felt like it was time for a change in more ways than one. In the summer of 2021, Brittany underwent a life-saving kidney transplant thanks to the incredible generosity of a college friend. Once she recovered, she jumped into her new role as a district coordinator for all of Brightkey as it expands to more elementary schools in the Dothan City School Program. As district coordinator, she leads school site coordinators as they implement the Brightkey model to impact the students, their families, the school, and the community. Brittany is a follower of Jesus. She loves her family, her dogs, the beach, travel, coffee, and Mexican food. I guess you're just like the rest of us. She enjoys cooking and entertaining in her home, going to concerts and hanging out with her nephew and niece. She's a fan of sports teams from the state of Georgia, which she says is often a disappointment, but not this year. Go Braves.
And go Dogs. She wouldn't say it.
I introduce Brittany Shepherd.
Not very tall, obviously. I'm gonna kind of stand to the side. Thank you, Brandon. I'm so excited to be here to talk with you about the Brightkey program that we have at Dothan City Schools. You may or may not be familiar with it, but about 6 or 7 years ago, we were here with Miss Melanie Hill as the program was kicking off, and she was developing the program with Wiregrass Foundation. So we're expanding, and I want to tell you all about that and some of our needs that we have, and just update you with what's going on with Brightkey in Dothan City Schools. So, what is Brightkey? So Brightkey is a stakeholder-driven program dedicated to developing and strengthening students, their families, the school, and the community as a whole. We do this through community partnerships with organizations, businesses, and individuals to provide innovative programs and services to our students. So I like to tell people it's connecting the community with the school to make an impact on their personal success and their family success. And then in turn, that brings the school more success and obviously the community growth. So our goal, we have 4 main goals, and I've mentioned it a couple of times now. So the whole child, every child. And what that means for us is we want to see every student achieving academically at their best. We want them to be at or above state averages. We want them to be healthy in all ways, emotionally, socially, physically, mentally. We want them to love learning and love coming to school, so their attendance is high. And we want their behavior to be excellent. And we want them to be involved in their education so that they have an intrinsic motivation to do well and to do their best. And of course, that impacts the family as well, because we want the family to engage in the student's learning and also to grow and meet the families' needs so that they can meet the students' needs. So that in turn makes the school stronger, where more families want to come to the school because they see the success of the students and families there. And of course, that brings a good reputation to the school, and that they're enjoying that reputation and promoting their school to get better teachers coming in. And so that in turn, as we know, public schools are the backbone of the community, grows the community. And so our goal with the community is that you're proud of your school system and that you see it as a place to invest your time and your resources. And so the community buys into the Brightkey model and helps it grow, which in turn is just this huge circle cycle that makes students, families, schools, and communities better. So our history, you may be a little familiar with this. So about 7-8 years ago, Bargrass Foundation president at the time, Dr. Barbara Alford, and a lady by the name of Allison Morgan and Dothan City Schools started talking about ways that the community could impact the school system in a more long-term way, outside of just grants here and there and volunteer opportunities. They began researching a model that was kind of popping up all over the country called community schools, where the school itself becomes an energized center for services for the community around it. So the neighborhood, if it's a neighborhood school, or just the city as a whole. So they began this process and talking to different principals and decided to pilot the program in a couple of schools. And so Selma Street Elementary School and Highlands Elementary School have been in the pilot mode for the last 5 or 6 years. The pilot time expanded a little bit with COVID and restructuring of the school system. So it took us, we got off the ground really fast and started going, and then things kind of slowed down with COVID and closing and then virtual. So we still operated during those times as Brightkey schools and Brightkey programs, but it was a little bit different. And so this year we're finally getting our footing back to more quote unquote normal year of programs and services. So we've seen results. We've seen data that proves that Brightkey works, the model works in all kinds of schools. As you can see, we started in Highlands and Selma Street. So to show that it can work in 2 different kinds of schools. We did a midway survey through PARCA, the Public Affairs Research Council of Alabama. They conducted a survey and evaluation and found that students in Brightkey programs at these schools met learning targets faster and higher rates than non-Brightkey students at those schools. And the families were engaging more and offering more parental support and involvement. And then the community's impact in the schools were greater because of the Brightkey program. Now we know we're not the only thing happening in these schools that's good, but we like to think that we are a part of the success and growth of these 2 schools. So Dothan City Schools said, okay, it's time to grow this program and expand it. And we're very excited that we have the opportunity to do that. So this year, we offered the program to Morris Plainfield Elementary School and Hurd Elementary School. When I say offer the program, that doesn't mean that we said, here, you're going to be a Brightkey school. It is a stakeholder process, a stakeholder-driven program. And when we say stakeholders, we mean the parents, the grandparents, other family members, the students themselves, the teachers, and the community that's already involved in that school. They have to say yes and vote us in. We don't just do Brightkey to them. They have to take ownership and buy into it. And they are the ones that drive the decisions and the programs and services. We just kind of put legs to their ideas, in other words. So with the expansion to these 2 new schools, and we're kicking off this year, and I'll tell you all about that, we're seeing great success and a lot of parental involvement and a lot of excitement surrounding the Brightkey programs at these schools. And so our hope is to grow even more along the way and add more elementary schools and eventually become a state and national model for success for this type of stakeholder-driven community schools program. So when I talk about the Brightkey model, it's very important to understand because, like I said, we don't do Brightkey to the school. They have to buy in. So the first conversation is with the principal. Is this something that you think your school could benefit from? And then if he says yes or she says yes, we present Brightkey and the model to the stakeholders. We have a meeting a large meeting where as many stakeholders as possible can attend. And we explain the program. We conduct a SWOT analysis, a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis of the school so that they can see if there are ways that Brightkey can help bring programs and opportunities to the students. And then they vote yes or no. And so if they vote yes, we move forward. And these two schools overwhelmingly voted yes. We had over 100 parents and grandparents and family members and teachers and staff at these meetings this year in the fall. And it was exciting to watch and see how energized they were about developing programs for their schools. And we do a thumbs up, thumbs down kind of voting system, and it was an overwhelming thumbs up. And so we're ready to get started. So from there, we form a leadership team at each school made up of teachers and parents, family members, guardians. And they develop a vision statement for Brightkey at their school. And it's an amazing thing to witness. It's about 10 or 12 people in the room and their ideas are endless. But when they develop that vision statement that kind of keys us in on what exactly Brightkey wants to do and impact in their school, it's really cool to watch. And then they narrow down the ideas from that SWOT analysis into 5 or 6 potential programs for their school to start with. And then we take it back to the large group of stakeholders at another meeting, and they vote on the first 3 programs. At each school, all 4, back in a couple years ago with Selma Street and Highlands, and this year with Hurd and Morris Love, they overwhelmingly, their #1 priority was obviously academic success, but one-on-one opportunities for students to work with an adult. Because we found that additional caring, supportive adult relationship is one of the keys to success for these students in our program. It's often said that every child is one caring adult relationship away from a success story. And so we like to fill in the gap there through our volunteers. So I have a video that I'm going to share next that we show to our stakeholders at these first meetings that kind of outlines everything that I just said to you, but in a more simple way, explains a little better than I do probably. So I'm going to play that real quick. There we go. No sound.
Well, Brightkey is a stakeholder school program. A stakeholder school program gives teachers, parents, and community partners a proven way to make their school better. Teachers, parents, and community partners are called stakeholders because they have a stake in the future of the school's programs. Stakeholders work with each school's Brightkey resource coordinator to choose programs for their school. One school may need an art program, while a different school may need a foreign language program. It all depends on what you, the stakeholders, believe will help your unique school improve in areas of attendance, behavior, and academic achievement. Here's an example. Stakeholders at School A want students to learn to play the piano, but do not have access to teaching or instruments. With assistance from the resource coordinator, the stakeholders work with local piano instructors to provide lessons. Stakeholders at School B are aware that many children in their school are not maximizing their academic potential. Therefore, one-on-one tutoring might be desired for some students, while others may benefit from enrichment-type programs. Unique schools, unique students, unique stakeholders, unique Brightkey programs. You, the stakeholders, determine what you want Brightkey to be at your school. Your involvement is the key to Brightkey. Without your interest, decision-making, and volunteering, Brightkey will not work. But with your interest, decision-making, and volunteering, Brightkey can help schools achieve success like never before. For information, visit brightkeywiregrass.org.
So that gives a better overview of that stakeholder-driven model. And the cool thing about it is that every school is different because every school has different stakeholders that have different desires and thoughts and needs for their students and for their families. And so you'll see when I go through each school and their programs how different they are, but then you'll see the similarities. Like I said, Tutoring was really the #1 ask at all 4 schools, and that meant one-on-one work with an adult on academic skills, but also sort of forming a mentorship type of relationship. And so that's obviously our greatest need, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that towards the end. That's where y'all come in. But I want to talk through each school's programming so that you can see how different it is, but how the model it works in the process. So the academic dream room is what we call our tutoring program, because in that room, we have a room set aside in each school that is the Brightkey academic dream room. It looks different from a classroom. It's decorated beautifully thanks to sponsors who have committed their money to helping us decorate and furnish the room. And so I'll tell you about that. At Highlands, the sponsor is Personnel Resources. They're right down the road, and they sometimes send volunteer support as well. And so it was a natural sponsorship for Personnel Resources. Selma Street has Ameris Bank as their academic dream room sponsor. Mike Schmidt is a sponsor at Herds, and then we have an anonymous donor for the sponsorship at Flingla that is honoring living kidney donors. So I thought that was really awesome. But for each school, besides that, the programs are almost completely different because those stakeholders, those parents, have a need in mind that they want met for their students. So at Highlands, we've undergone, and I say we because it was my school for 6 years. I was the coordinator at Highlands there before moving to the district role. We've undergone some changes due to restructuring, and the needs that the parents identified began to be filled by Dothan City Schools. So outside of academic dream room, language and culture was a program that they requested. And so for a while, we had Chinese classes through the Confucian Institute at Troy, but DCS now offers a Spanish teacher. So that need was met by DCS, and so my program team for language and culture began discussing other ways to bring in languages. And we have some deaf students at Highlands, and so those parents said, let's have sign language classes so that the peers of the deaf students can communicate with them. And so they have sign language classes offered through AIDB, the Alabama Institute for the Deaf and Blind. Then we had an art program where Cultural Arts Center brought in visual arts for our students weekly as part of their specials rotation. Well, now DCS offers an art teacher. So that visual arts was met, and our parents decided they wanted to go the basic practical arts route. When we say that, we mean etiquette and manners and thank you letters and nutrition and life skills and financial literacy. So this program is under development, basic practical arts. With musical instruments, we have ukuleles that were provided to us by a community partner, and our music teacher actually uses these ukuleles in a ukulele class for students. And then Key Connections is our parent program, and we work with PTO to offer learning opportunities for parents and families and social events on campus. So of course, COVID put a little damper in that, but things are getting back to normal. At Selma Street, they have the academic dream room for tutoring. And of course, this is staffed by volunteer parents and grandparents and community members. Selma Street has a strong partnership with ACOM that they use, their students come for volunteer hours and tutor the students at Selma Street. But there's also other community members and parents and grandparents that tutor there. They have a mentoring program with a partnership for the Girls with Girls Inc. and for the Boys with Boy Scouts. They have a Career Connections program. And this is partnerships all over the city and is developing into a really cool program that we hope we can imitate or recreate at the other schools in the future. And then Grow, Live, Learn is their gardening program that they work with Extension and other community resources and had a community garden at their school. And then Live Rich is a resource program for parents that offers backpacks of food for the weekend, a snack closet, a clothes closet for students at Selma Street. Here are some pictures of some things happening at Highlands and Selma Street. These are the two schools that have been in development the longest, and so they have programs operational right now. You'll see that the big picture on the right is the academic dream room tutoring, where adults from the community or parents and grandparents are there volunteering, working one-on-one with a student on an academic skill. They work with the same student every week, but they're building a relationship with them and getting to know them, and it's kind of like another cheerleader in their corner and encourager, motivator. So I don't know if you recognize Mr. Tom Signalbuilder right there. And then the bottom right is Girls Inc., working with Selma Street students. And then if you keep moving clockwise, we've got sign language pictures and more tutoring pictures. And then at Highlands, there's about 100 students in the academic dream room and about a little more than 100 at Selma Street. But at Highlands, we have fewer tutoring students and more enrichment students. And so they are pulled by small group to work on STEM activities, science, technology, energy, engineering, and math. So the coordinator there has built sort of a curriculum. Well, I built the curriculum, but she is building onto it as well, of STEM project-based learning activities. And they come weekly, and it's like a mini LINK program, which LINK is the gifted and talented program for elementary students. But the students that are coming to Brightkey are your middle average students who didn't qualify for the gifted program, but are not struggling. So they wanted to provide an extra challenge for them to get more hands-on learning that ties their classroom concepts to real world, real life things. So those are some pictures from Highlands and Selma Street. Now, Hurd and Morris Lingla are expanding this year. We had all of our initial stakeholder meetings in the fall. And the programs that they came up with, of course, academic dream room at both schools, and then technology at Hurd, and they mean everything from typing skills to coding. It's a touchscreen world that we live in, right? And so these little kindergartners, they come in know how to use a touchscreen, but if they can't type and really don't have the hand-eye coordination quite yet to learn, but some of their assessments and things require keyboard. And so typing skills was identified as something that these students need to be really working on because it'll serve them well for the long term. But also coding, robotics, things like that would fall under technology. And this program is under development there. They want to do a farm to school type program and have a community garden as well. They have a great space for it on their campus and a teacher that is really into this idea. And so she's going to help lead up that program team. And they hope to use it for enrichment opportunities for extra learning for the students to learn about the planting and growing process and also about nutrition and where their food comes from. And they would love to have like a local school market, farmers market for their school. And then also be able to help source some things to their lunchroom. And then at Morris Lingla, I thought these programs were really cool there because that just shows you the priorities of the parents there. Besides academic dream room, parent and family engagement was the next most asked for program. And they have met and they want to design sort of a learning series for their parents where one, the draw to the school is a fun activity for the whole family. But then there are workshops for the parents to be able to learn things, everything from homework help, how to help your student with their learning, but also learning for the parents, whether that be financial literacy or resume writing or mental health type services and programs to bring to the parents to help them. Sorry, my phone is telling me to take some medicine. To help them become better parents and to be more engaged in their students' learning. And then their next program was teacher appreciation and support, which I felt was really awesome because they recognized how important it is to appreciate and support the teachers. And so they're wanting to build some sort of resource request program. So when a teacher has a project or an activity they'd like to do, they can look to the Brightkey team and the other parents in the school and say, hey, I need 24 1-gallon milk jugs for this activity, this learning activity. Can you help us find it? So that's where they're starting off at these schools. But I do have some pictures from their initial meetings. And it was just really, really neat to see that many parents in one place. And they're excited and they aren't silent. They're willing to speak up and talk about their needs and their wants and the things that they would love to see for their students. And it's just an amazing thing. And these two schools are led by wonderful principals who already buy into the Brightkey program and the Brightkey model and also really work very hard to engage their parents in the school building. So I did want to introduce you to the Brightkey coordinators. So Miss Rosalind James is at Morris Lingla, and she is probably, most of you probably know who Miss James is. So she's very well connected in the community, and she's a great lady, and she has a lot of people skills to get community involved. And so she's doing a great job there, and they are actually kicking off their tutoring program tomorrow because we're trying to get 8 to 10 good weeks of tutoring in before spring testing. And we're meeting the needs of these students kind of in the middle low section of the data that have the ability to grow between now and then. We want to see if we can get them from the yellow to the green if we're looking at red, yellow, and green. These yellow students are trying to bump them up to the green. And so she kicks off tomorrow with her tutoring program, and it's very exciting. She has about 60 kids and about 38 volunteers. So as you can see, we always need more volunteers. And then at Highlands, Jessica Stelton-Pole, she used to work for the United Way, and she is a parent at Highlands and has been a volunteer for me and served on my leadership team when I was the coordinator there. But she was a natural fit to fall into this role. She has 3 students at Highlands and very much understands the Brightkey process and is doing a wonderful job there. And then at Selma Street is Jennifer Campbell. She's, along with me, one of the OG original Brightkey girls, and she's been at Selma Street for the duration of the Brightkey program. Her background is counseling. She was a school counselor. And then Lindsay Wagner is at Hurd, and she is most recently worked at a child advocacy center, and she is doing a great job over there. They would be kicking off their tutoring tomorrow, but she's not have COVID. So they'll start next week, hopefully. So as I mentioned before, I'll get to what we need from you. Our greatest need is volunteer support. And we have wonderful parents and grandparents at all of these schools that are doing as much as they can to be volunteer tutors working one-on-one with the students. But of course, that's never going to fill the bucket. It's not going to meet the quota, in other words. And so we lean to the community, we look to the community to offer that volunteer support. And we have great partnerships already with a lot of community businesses and organizations and individuals. But we're always looking to expand, especially as we're expanding. We're going to need the community support. And so Slingwood and Hurd are the 2 newest schools that need the most volunteer support right now. But the other 2 schools can always use an extra helping hand, because the more volunteers we have, the more students we can serve. And I mentioned that we have about 100 Brightkey students at each school every year, and they are in the Brightkey program. If they join tutoring, they start in the fall, and they stay for the duration of the school year. And the volunteer that comes and works with that student works with that same student every week, one-on-one. It's about 30 minutes, 45 minutes at some schools. You're working on an academic skill. It's very easy. You come in, all the materials and answers are provided for you, so you never have to worry if you're answering the question right. And basically, you're just helping with reading skills, phonics, sight words, reading comprehension. They may read a short text and answer comprehension questions. If there's any math, we promise it's not hard. It's basic foundational math skills like memorizing multiplication facts, working on basic addition and subtraction, so simple math. But mostly we focus in on reading, but math needs are there. So if you are a math person and you love math, we need you. But the time commitment is really 30 to 45 minutes once a week. And you get good breaks. Of course, you get all the school breaks, but we do our best not to burn you out as a volunteer. And the biggest thing is that you are working with a student and it's the same student. So you're getting to know them. And yes, you're working on their academics, but they see you as their friend and they get excited about it. It's so fun because these students know they're coming in for extra work, but they love Brightkey. They love their adult partner. And they look forward to it every week. They don't see it as any kind of punishment or, I guess, for not doing well. It's exciting and it's fun to them. Of course, any opportunity to go out of class and be like called out and singled out in a good way is always fun. But I just remember walking the halls in the mornings and seeing some of my Brightkey students, and they would say, Miss Shepherd, is so-and-so coming today? Is she going to be here today? Yes, baby, as far as I know, she's coming. You'll have your time at Brightkey. Okay, good. I always worry if she's not going to be here. So they love that consistent adult relationship. And to be honest, a lot of the students that end up in Brightkey tutoring can be ones that don't have a ton of support at home. And so just being another adult that can encourage and help them grow, that they are friends with and trust, makes a world of difference for them because they really look forward to it. So on your tables, there are these little cards that have a QR code. You can scan that QR code and it takes you to a Google form that just gets your basic contact information and of the school that you might like to volunteer at if you're interested. This is not a commitment, it's just if you like more information. I actually have the QR code up here. So we'd love for you to fill that out, and then one of those lovely ladies on the picture before will contact you depending on what schools you might be interested in working in. And we'll tell you how to go from there. The only thing that we ask is that you try to be as consistent as possible, but we know you're a volunteer and you got dentist appointments in life, you know, things happen. And that you can pass a background check. So those are the 2 requirements. So it's pretty easy to volunteer, and it's as far as what you do, it's all lined out for you. You don't have to come up with anything, think of anything ahead of time. You can show up, grab your material for the day, and read a 3rd grade story with some comprehension questions for the kid, and it makes their day. I think that's all I have to really say, but I'd love, if you have any questions or any other comments, I would love to hear from you. If you've ever volunteered in a Brightkey program, we'd love to hear from you. But one thing I didn't mention was that, yes, our greatest need is volunteers, but Brightkey is a self-sustaining program, which means we do what we can with community partnerships, because we try to operate without a lot of funding, so that if I were to leave or a coordinator were to be gone, the programs can be run almost by the stakeholders. They can do it without us being there if we have to make it happen. So when we say self-sustaining, that means sometimes we need community sponsorships, but we don't actually accept the funds as Brightkey. We work with our community partners. So for an example, like if we did a program with the Cultural Arts Center and they were going to provide a service to a Brightkey program and they needed help funding it, if you were a funding partner, then you would donate directly to the Cultural Arts Center, if that makes sense. And so then they would be able to offer the service to Brightkey in the school. So there's always a need there as we move on. Pretty soon at the 2 new schools, we'll be having ribbon cuttings with the chamber to announce the opening of our academic dream room sometime in the spring. They will definitely already be having tutoring happening, but the rooms are getting furnished and decorated and they look great. They're kind of like little coffee shops in the school almost. So the kids like think it looks totally different than a classroom, and they get excited because it's not the normal. So we'll have those ribbon cuttings, so stay tuned for those dates, and we'd love to have you at the ribbon cuttings. I'm trying to think, anything else specifically? Do you have any questions? Yes, sir.
How do you work this program into the regular curriculum that each school has?
Right, so that takes a lot of collaboration with our principals and school staff. So our tutoring program and most all Brightkey programs operate during the school day. So we rely on the administration at the schools to help us formulate a schedule that works best for the students, because we can't pull them from specific things. You know, they can't be pulled out of the classroom during reading time. They can't miss PE because that's a law. They have to go PE. So we have to really work with the school staff. And so the schedules and things look very different based on the schedule at the school. But that's where principal leadership is huge and the staff leadership is huge. And then we tie everything we do to an academic standard that the teachers are already, following and teaching. And so the tutoring, we work very specifically with the reading coaches at the schools and also the teachers for the resources that we use, because we want to make sure we are meeting the needs of that individual student. And so it's an individualized program when it comes to tutoring. It's not a blanket kind of thing. So we try to meet the discrepancies and the deficiencies with each individual student. So we work very closely with the staff for that. That was a good question. Anything else?
What small town in Georgia are you from?
I'm from Colquitt, Georgia.
Okay.
I grew up coming to Dothan. It's only an hour away from here. This is my where we went to the mall and to the movies and to Walmart. So yes.
Hey, Brittany.
Hey, Rebecca.
Would you tell us, maybe share with the group, any of these successes, little small successes that you could think of?
Yes. Okay. So obviously academic success is an important thing that we tend to focus on. And so we do see that among our Brightkey students that are especially in the tutoring program, just the gains that they make from we call them benchmark tests, from like a fall test to a winter test, from a winter test to a spring test. But the biggest thing that I like to tell are the little anecdotes and the little stories about how Brightkey students are impacted. And I think, I'm trying to think of very specific, but just those relationships that those volunteers are forming with those students. In particular, I had a little boy who had sort of it was a grandmother at our school that was his tutor, volunteer, and he came up to me one afternoon crying, and I said, "What's wrong, baby?" He said, "I just wish my grandma was as sweet as Miss So-and-so." And so it's a lot about the relationship, as I'm saying. So it just makes a world of difference in a lot of these students' lives, that they don't have a lot of support at home. And that's not the case for all of them. It's not a blanket, statement, because we are identifying the students based on academic needs, but the teachers also and the staff also take into their personal lives when they recommend them for academic dream room, what they know about them and their families. But those personal relationships are huge. Gosh, I have so many that it's like when you tell me to think of one, I can't think of one. But even the things like Girls Inc. at Selma Street, teaching all girls to be strong, smart, and bold, or I think that's the 3 things: strong, smart, and bold. Those girls loved Girls Inc. And they're ones that would probably go to Girls Inc. if they could get there, or if they had a way to participate. And so they get to do it at school. And the same thing with Boy Scouts with those boys. And the cohorts of students that are in those 2 programs are definitely the ones that have behavior concerns. And just seeing the difference and the fact that they look forward to something like this, and they make sure they're at school on those days, that kind of thing is really cool. I need to be better prepared with those answers, maybe that's. And if you would like more information, come talk to me afterwards and we can get your contact information and call you individually for any meeting.
Thank you, Brittany, for what you do. I think it's really interesting that personal relationships, just you never know the effect we can have on someone. I remember an older guy in high school who was an older brother of a guy in my class, and saying something one day that just had a real effect on me. So we never know the positive effect we can have. Our program next week is Angela Underwood, the Executive Director of the House of Youth. Thank you for all of our guests and visiting Rotarians. And would everyone stand with me for the 4-way test? Of the things we think, say, or do,
Is it true? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it will be beneficial for all concerned?